Hi, this is Mehmet Altın. Welcome to Chapter 5, the Revenue Manager's Role. Uh, in this chapter, we are going to explain hard and soft supply constraint demand faced by the revenue managers in the hospitality industry. Also, we're going to examine the legal and ethical aspects of revenue management, and we will just touch a little bit on the typical job responsibilities and reporting relationship of revenue managers. Now, if you recall from the earlier chapters, revenue managers extremely rely on applying available data and using own insight for forecasting demand, managing distribution channels, pricing, and such. However, one of the question is if revenue management employed in many industries, why hospitality revenue management will be unique in hospitality for hospitality? Answer is in hospitality revenue management deals with both hard and soft supply constraint. But what do we mean by that? So let's try to understand those definitions first. Hard supply constraint means there is a restriction on product availability, meaning in the short run, no matter the price, you cannot produce new supply. In other industries, for example, you estimate demand and produce as much as needed, whatever that product is needed, considering production cost and estimate price. Like for example, your smartphones, right? You consider demand, produce less or more smartphone. Of course, using a storage, for example, you can let's say you produce a lot, you can put in the storage, right? If there is a small variation in demand, and if it's needed, you can produce also more. It depends on your factory's limitation, but usually is easier comparatively. Overall, there is no extreme variation, and revenue manager's job is relatively easy. Let us look at the lodging industry with many challenges. Except a few out-of-order rooms, your capacity is fixed. Demand, as most of you working in industry know, vary widely, right? So supply is fixed, demands vary widely. So we talked about inventory problem that we cannot put unsold rooms to storage. We cannot also increase the room number overnight. I mean, think about it. You need years, sometimes actually more, needed to supply to increase. You need to build a new hotel. Similarly, when there is a less demand, we cannot reduce rooms available, right? Of course, you could have some wiggle room, such as assuming your hotel allows, you can close down some wings in your hotel to save an electricity, etc. But still, that is limited because you cannot eliminate many things. So that's what we call a hard constraint. The smartphone producer has, if smartphone producer has similar issues, their revenue management job will be much harder. So for example, in the hard constraint, we have multiple options when we have a high demand. For example, in option A, we can establish one fixed price, then sell to customer on a first come, first served basis until they have exhausted their supply of products. In option B, we can allocate the limited supply to selected customers who meet established criteria. For example, it could be volume buyers, repeat buyers, or they hold some kind of favored buyer status. That's the allocation of the limited supply. And in option C is we raise prices until demand is reduced sufficiently to equal to available supply. We usually combine B and C to develop effective strategy. Soft constraint management, on the other hand, like I said, while lodging industry revenue managers face a hard supply constraint, most food service operators face soft supply constraints. I mean, what we mean by they have the ability to add maybe few chairs or extend lunch hours or dinner hours, etc. So in addition, more than that, they can add, like, for example, drive-through, carry-out, or delivery services. Let's say, let's say you have 100 seats and you open 10 hours a day, so your total available seat hours is 100 times 10 is the 1,000 hours. In addition, you can also have some influence on how long customers stay, like table turnover, right? I mean, a simple example will be like changing the volume or pace of music to influence the people, or serving quicker, or printing checks ahead of time. Like, there are many different ways to let the table turnover to get a little bit fast. But in the end, we have a little bit more wiggle room from revenue management perspective in the when we consider the soft constraint management. Now, let's talk about the legal and ethical aspects of the revenue management. Now, first, we know that modern capitalism certainly contributes to innovation, wealth, and prosperity. However, if left unchecked, capitalism could also create problems. I mean, let's discuss some of these. For example, in the late 1800s, big corporations and wealthy families used immoral practices to gain power and wealth. They were able to fix or raise prices without competition, or they used their power to crush many smaller enterprises. I'm sure you are watching some of those documentaries in the television. Now, the federal antitrust legislations are laws and regulations aimed at preventing abusive business behavior or anti-competitive practices, including those related to unfair pricing. Overall, these laws, antitrust legislation, promoted economic fairness and allowed a better competitive environment. Let's not forget, in any kind of environment, if the competition is allowed, if there are many competitors in the market, it helps everyone. But the people, more advancement, innovation, and etc. So, for example, the first one is the Sherman Antitrust Act, as stated in its name, refers to U.S. law prohibiting trusts, cartels, and monopolies. Is an antitrust. It outlaws all contracts and conspiracies that unreasonably restrain interstate trade. This includes any competitor's agreement to fix prices, rig bids, or allocate customers. Sherman Act violations are punished as criminal felonies, and Department of Justice enforces the act. I mean, I'm not going to talk about too much in each state's law, but there are similar laws in the states as well. Like, for example, a meeting with other hotels in your town to fix prices before an event might not be a good idea for future revenue managers. As a matter of fact, there was a recent article from Las Vegas accusing that casino hotel owners there to rig the prices, just to give you an example. Next one is the Federal Trade Commission Act, created the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, which was established for the express purpose of enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act. The FTC can prevent businesses from engaging in certain activities simply by declaring them illegal. You almost always hear some news about mergers and involvement of FTC. Recently, I just read it recently, Microsoft wanted to buy Activision Blizzard, the gaming company, about for $69 billion, but FTC stopped them, and I guess they are still going into court about that right now. The Clayton Act mandates that a business must apply its prices fairly. That is, it cannot illegally discriminate in its pricing policies. Robinson-Patman Act, also known as the Small Business Protection Act, it prevents sellers from giving discount prices to volume buyers if the volumes required for the discounts are so high that only one or two buyers could meet them. It also outlaws predatory pricing. If you recall, the predatory pricing is the practice of a firm harming consumers by selling its products below cost or at a price developed with intent of driving competitors out of market. Thus creating a monopoly. Like, think about it this way. I'm a very big company. I have a competitor, but they are not very strong. I am lowering price so much is sometimes under the cost. Basically, they will be out of business because they cannot afford. But I'm a big company. I can afford. And after they're gone, I can do the price any way I want. So that is the predator pricing. Let's not forget there could be also state country specific laws and regulations you need to know. I just mentioned also a little bit ago. Like price gouging is like, for example, in Florida, the increasing of prices often in response to a natural disaster or emergency beyond a level deemed reasonable by society. I'm just going to read this note from my notes. You don't really need to know that, but it's good to know for your future. Like, for example, Florida Statute 501.160 states that during a state of emergency, it is unlawful to rent, sell, lease, offer to rent, sell, or lease essential commodities, dwelling units, or self-storage facilities at an unconscionable price. A price is presumed to be unconscionable if there is a gross disparity between the price charged during the state of emergency and the average price during the 30 days before the state of emergency, or the price grossly exceeds the average price the same or similar commodity was available in the trade area during the 30 days before the declaration of state of emergency, unless the seller can justify the price by showing increase in its cost or market trends. Example of necessary commodities for storm events are food, water, ice, gas, lodging, and lumber. So basically, if you're selling a gas, let's say right now it's average, let's say $3, but the hurricane hit and you make the $5, that is price gouging and also it is unlawful. Now, first thing to consider is obviously is the intent and action legal. Following that, we can go look into more an ethical aspect of the decision. But first, what is ethics? Ethics is moral standards of right and wrong conduct towards others. So moral standards of right and wrong conduct toward others. What is morally good and bad? Ethics is a system of moral principles. They affect how people make decisions and lead their lives, right? Revenue managers faces ethical dilemmas daily. I mean, hotel is full, but 5% usually no shows. Should we overbook? Like, you need to think about, right? But don't forget the customer-centric revenue management approach. And there is another example in the book talking about the kickback for price reduction. I mean, clear violation of ethics, but possibly illegal as well. There are many examples with no clear-cut answers. You can read some of those in the book as well. Now, next question is, are the profits resulting from my actions unethical? Let us think that the price depends on the alternatives to the buyer. Like, for example, charge $10 for a bottle of water normal time is a bad business. Charge $10 water after hurricane is not only unethical, most likely illegal, right? Even if there is no law, but still it's very bad practice. However, I pay 25 cents at Costco for a bottle of water. Most likely the same bottle of water will be $4 or $5 at the airport, and many people accept that. Okay, think about this. Also, allocation of scarce resources. Like, think about it, June wedding. There is only one ballroom in your town. Of course, that value of that ballroom is going to be higher during summers. The whole idea here, right, related to is revenue managers should be able to defend and justify their pricing policies. Okay, let's not forget there is no such thing as minor lapse of integrity. You have to be happy with yourselves and with your decisions. Now, similar to what I was saying, your price is presented fairly. Understanding that presenting the price, adding like 0.99 to your price, like $89.99, because $8 to $7.99 looks more savings than $7.99 to $7.92. Main idea here is presenting prices openly, no intent to disguise them. I mean, when the people see, they might think it doesn't look like instead of like $90, $89.99, like different. Now we get used to, but when this thing started, people were like, oh, I mean, what, this is $90. What's the point of $89.99? This is about the psychology. But the main idea with the are my prices presented fairly is instead of do you have an intent to disguise them? Like, for example, they tried before hidden charges. For example, hotel used to charge energy or other surcharges, right? So customers' reaction will not be positive if they feel prices presented in an unfair way. Okay. And the last thing is, are my prices perceived as fair by customers? This is the most difficult question. Customers always seek lower prices. I mean, do you know anyone that will say, I prefer to pay high? So one important aspect is not high price, but unfair price. Like there is a dual entitlement theory. You can read a little bit in that in the book. It says reasonable price and reasonable profit. Basically, price has to be reasonable, but also the seller needs to make money too. It has to be reasonable profit. Think about it, like, for example, snow shovel is $25, but during the storm, they raised it to $35. Now, 82% of customers said it was an unfair practice. On the other hand, 76% of economics students at University of Chicago said it was fair. Maybe those students are looking from supply and demand perspective, because economic perspectives say it is okay. There is a strong demand. However, consumers look at the two things. First one is the reference price, some form of acceptable, reasonable price to pay. Let us say you pay about $10 for pizza on average, and one day you visit the pizza store and they are asking $20 for similar pizza, right? Your reference point was $10. Second one is the comparing to others. For example, you paid $20,000 for a new car from a dealer, and you are very happy about it. You know, you got your car as a brand new, it's $20,000 you paid. However, you learn that your friend bought the same car for $18,000. That is most likely will upset you, right? So perception of the price is important, and how you present it is also important. So that's why that basically just setting the price for a revenue manager is not only option. There are other things you have to think in this customer-centric approach. Buyers must be convinced the prices they are paying are fair if they are become to repeat customers. Employees of a business must be convinced the prices charged by their employees are fair if they are to be effective salesperson for the business, and business owners must be convinced the prices they receive for the products and services they make and sell are fair, or they will not continue their business, right? You have to take care of each level, sellers and buyers. So overall, as a future revenue managers or general managers, you need to remember, first, it is important that prices are presented fairly. If hidden or after purchase fees are included, consumers will feel cheated. If it's upfront, no problem. If they accept, they're fine. The second is consumers prefer reward to punishment. It is better to reward guests who purchase more or more often than to penalize them if they purchase less or less frequently. You understand the difference, right? Your level of pricing is always should look like you are rewarding it. Next one is the people tend to favor discount over surcharges, similar to what we are saying, reward versus punishment is wording it differently. The next one is the prices are merely justified for shortages or increased consumer demand may be regarded unfavorably. I mean, you cannot just say because we are short of consumer demand. You have to package them in a way that is reasonable to them. And if low prices are offered, they should be available to all buyers who satisfy the low price criteria or have fence established for them. If lower prices are offered to all, buyers are free to decide whether they wish to meet the qualification criteria or not. You remember the fences we talked about the previous chapter. And pricing offers must be clearly explained and easily understood if they differ from traditional approaches. It is important to present the version from traditional pricing approaches to consumers carefully and comprehensively so that they perceive them to be fair. So how you present is important. Let's not forget. By the way, there are different names for revenue managers. You can check the book for that. But overall, this is what the revenue managers does, right? The first, they establish a price. So price strongly communicates value placed on a product. Let's not forget the strategic pricing and the price. The second, depending on price, we forecast demand. Demand is sometimes highly dependent on price. Let's not forget. Mathematical modeling must have ability to forecast. Forecasting is a very important part and is also the next chapter in the book. Then we withhold or make available our inventory to specific buyer, both for the long term and short term. Then, of course, we value intermediaries as the process. Basically, are we going to use OTS, different distribution channels? How are we going to manage that distribution? And later, we evaluate our results. And if we need it, we also rethink about the price and continue with the same circle. I mean, you can just read this. It's similar to what we have in the book. These are the typical revenue management responsibilities in the industry. In the full service resorts, they look at the rooms, meeting space, food and beverage, and etc. Full service hotels the same, guest routing, meeting space, food and beverage. Limited service, usually they focus only on the rooms. Condominium and timeshares, units, food, beverage operations. Cruise ships, of course, cabins and activities. Commercial restaurants, about the food service, prices, beverage services, meeting space. Amusement park is the admission tickets, food and beverage operation, rides and activities. And private clubs such as golf, tea times, once again, food and beverage operations there, meeting space. Private clubs also for the dining, food and beverage operation, meeting space. Convention centers, meeting space, food and beverage operations. Sport and entertainment venues is the tickets. Meetings or event space, food and beverage operations. In the casinos, they look at both guest room, food and beverage operations, but the casinos, let's not forget, because they bring majority or their money from the casino side, sometimes they do heavy discounts on the guest rooms. This is also part of the revenue management. And spas is the spa services and salon services. These are only in our industry, and different industries has a different responsibilities for the revenue managers. And let's not forget also revenue management is done in many places. Not person has a revenue management title, but it's been done by the director of sales, director of the front desk manager, general manager, etc. Sometimes they handled by the other managers as well. Okay, thank you.